Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda Granger. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at the WNET Group, the home of Channel 13, America's flagship PBS station in New York City. On behalf of everyone at the WNET Group, I want to thank you for joining us for the closing night of Sometimes We Must Interfere, Conversations on Confronting Inhumanity. Our program is held in support of the U.S. and the Holocaust, a new 3-part, 6-hour series directed and produced by Ken Burns, Lynn Novick, and Sarah Botstein that explores America's response to one of the greatest humanitarian crises of the 20th century. You can watch the film and learn more at pbs.org/Holocaust or on the PBS app. Tonight's program, The Border Between Then and Now, a conversation with people threatened with deportation, is presented by the WNET Group and the station's Exploring Hate initiative. Designed to investigate the roots and rise of hate in this country and around the world, Exploring Hate, Anti-Semitism, Racism, and Extremism covers the urgent issues we are grappling with today and examines how we got here. Its stories, programs, and series appear on all of WNET's local and national broadcasts and across our digital platforms. You can learn more at pbs.org/exploringhate. Part of the WNET Group's mission is to provide meaningful experiences to our audiences and communities, to educate, entertain, and inspire. By bringing together frontline thought leaders to discuss complex topics of history in the present day, we hope Sometimes We Must Interfere will provide information and ideas that will be helpful to us all. We will have time for an audience Q&A towards the end, so as you watch the live stream, please post your questions in the comments section. I'd like to thank our promotional partners for Sometimes We Must Interfere. We are incredibly grateful for the support of Facing History and Ourselves and Self-Help Community Services. We'd also like to thank our ASL interpreters for tonight, Rashida Jackson and Wanye Jefferson. And last, a very special thanks to WNET's 400 plus community partners from across sectors and across communities throughout the 5 boroughs. Their input has shaped and inspired our thinking around this topic and many others. A quick reminder that the views expressed by tonight's guests and attendees are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the WNET Group. And now I'm pleased to introduce WNET's Director of Community Partnerships and the curator of Sometimes We Must Interfere, Brian Tate.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's wonderful to see all of you tonight. I want to begin by acknowledging and paying deep respect to the Lenape people, upon whose unceded and ancestral homeland lies the city we call Manhattan. Please join me in this affirmation from a spirit of humility and solidarity, with an ongoing commitment to racial justice and decolonization. I want to also acknowledge the continuity between our being here today and all of the people who've come before us and the struggle for liberation and the full expression of our humanity against forces of hate, racism, fascism, and greed. Many people have been lost, many lives have been lost in that struggle, and we hold all those people close. We value their lives, and we honor them every time we come together across communities to speak truth and create change. Now I want to begin our program tonight. I want to tell you that every time we hold these town halls, we start with a performance by a gifted musician or spoken word artist to help gather us across this virtual space and remind us and underscore why we have come together to have these tough conversations, and that's for the culture. So we're very excited to have with us tonight a talented and wonderful singer, composer, and activist, Ani Cordero.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ani, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Where are you right now?
I'm in Brooklyn, in Bushwick.
Brooklyn is good. I'm in Brooklyn too. And other times, I'm looking forward to us being able to have a coffee together.
Totally.
What song are you going to perform for us this evening?
I'm going to play a song called Voy Caminando, and it's about the very human desire to just live freely and be able to have the freedom to improve your life and search for your dreams.
Wonderful. We can't wait to hear it.
Thanks.
Ani Cordero, everyone.
No me queda nada, no hay por qué quedarme en las cenizas, solo el sol me saluda. Hoy me voy a buscar una nueva aventura y me voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, oh, oh. Piso, tierra, charcos, montañas y nieve, arena, bosque, fango, ¿cuántos más están buscando? Paso playas, pueblos, montañas y valles, desiertos y lagos, ¿cuántos más están buscando? Soñando, caminando. Y me voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, oh, oh. Piso, tierra, charcos, montañas y nieve, arena, bosque, fango, ¿cuántos más buscando? Paso playas, pueblos, montañas y valles, desiertos y lagos, ¿cuántos más están buscando? Soñando, caminando. Y me voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, 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 voy caminando, voy caminando. Oh, oh, oh. Aquí voy, aquí voy, aquí voy. Aquí voy, aquí voy, aquí voy.
Ani, that was incredible. Oh my gosh. I was having a great response to your song as I was sitting here in my office.
Thank you. It's meant to like center us and give a peaceful feeling. So I hope you feel that.
Indeed, created a great context for the conversation to come. Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone, if you were as knocked out and as moved by Ani's music as we were, you can learn more about what she's doing at her website, anicordero.net. Thank you so much, Ani. Audience, please join me now in welcoming tonight's incredible panel for The Border Between Then and Now, a conversation with people threatened with deportation. You can find everyone's bios on the event page for tonight at pbs.org/exploring-hate. That's pbs.org/exploring-hate. And that link to everyone's bios should also be in the chat wherever you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook. And remember that the panel would like to hear from you as well. So please be sure to drop your own questions into the chat on social media, and we will get them here, and those questions will be asked. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our moderator, Cristina Jimenez Moreta, co-founder, United We Dream. Cristina, great to see you.
Great to see you, Ryan.
And our panelists, Hasnia Cougar, Hasnia, I see your name, and I'm sure that you're...
I'm here. I don't know if you can see me.
We can't see you yet, but we can hear you.
Oh,
I'm going to continue with the other introductions, but I do want to say it's wonderful to have you here.
thank you.
Cynthia Garcia. Hey, Cynthia, great to see you. Ravi Ragbeer. Ravi, hey, and I want to ask you all to unmute.
There you go.
And you can just stay unmuted, and if there becomes any type of audio issue, the wonderful folks behind the scenes will deal with that. And of course, Naisha Vilmay. Naisha,
Hi, everyone.
it's great to see you. Okay, do we, before I turn it over to you, Christina, I just want to ask Husnia, your camera's on?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
can others see me? I can see
Now-
myself.
Now we see you.
Okay.
See you now. That's great.
We
Excellent.
see you now.
Okay, so Christina, I'm going to leave this in your very capable hands, and you all have a wonderful conversation, and I'll see you in about 60 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you to the entire team at WNET for bringing us together tonight. And thank you to all of the speakers. It's truly an honor for me to engage in the conversation for tonight. And to all of our audience, thank you for joining us. For tonight's conversation on the border between then and now, we'll be reflecting on how history connects to the present and explore the path forward towards a more humane and justice society. And I would like to get started tonight with the moment that we are in. Currently, we are seeing in the news and seeing in our communities how refugees and people seeking asylum are arriving at our borders, seeking refuge. And what some Republican governors from states like Texas and Florida, as an example, are taking action to sending immigrants to other places and refugees to other places like New York, Washington, D.C., and recently Martha's Vineyard. They are lying to refugees. They're putting them in buses and planes and sending them to places where they cannot reunite with their families. They're doing all of this as a way to use refugees and immigrants as political pawns right before the November midterm elections. But this treatment of refugees, it's not new, and it's part of a long history of our country's white supremacy, systematic racism, anti-Blackness, and anti-immigrant sentiment that have, over time, shaped our culture, our systems, and our laws. So with that context of the moment that we are in, I would like to get started with Cynthia and Ravi here. Both of you have experienced firsthand the inhumanity and the injustice of our immigration laws. And I would love to hear from you and for the audience to learn from you about your own analysis for how we got to this moment. And what are the lessons from history that we can learn about and keep in mind when it comes to the treatment of refugees and immigrants? Cynthia, let's start with you, and then we move on to Ravi. Cynthia?
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for all the panelists who are joining me today and everybody who's watching us. My name is Cynthia Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. And I am really excited to share this conversation and just thinking about my personal experience. I'm a DACA recipient who came to the US at the age of 15, who've experienced firsthand being detained, who was expelled when we arrived to the United States. And so this is very deeply personal. And I think it's important to recognize that this is not a moment that just happened. It has been, as you shared, Christina, part of policies and laws and systemic white supremacy at the core of what drives immigration laws from as early as the definition of citizenship in this country, thinking about the exclusion of indigenous people, of Black folks, of the policies really early on, like the Chinese Exclusion Act, all of these things collectively, really separating non-white people, specifically non-wealthy or property-owning white people, as somehow a superior race, and really defining the immigration laws as a policy that determine the humanity of people. And so what we're seeing in this moment is a compilation of dehumanization of people who don't fit this model of what American is, and really based on dehumanizing people who are in a deep moment of need. I know that in this moment, a lot of folks think that people being placed in buses or being moved around the country in such a vulnerable state is not an act of violence, but it's in fact an act of violence towards the humanity of people who've already come in to a country that they don't know, who are trying to reunite with loved ones or community to build community here. And I couldn't imagine what my experience would have been like if 20 years ago, when I arrived with my family, my mother and my sister, to the United States, I would have been put in a bus not knowing when I was going to get to connect with the rest of my family. And so I think that this moment, it's important to recognize as a building up from things in history that have connected the humanization of particularly Black, Indigenous, and non-white folks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Let's hear from you on these questions, Ravi.
Sure. So this is history repeating itself, and you hear that you just heard from Garcia how it is embedded in the racism, right? And you go back to the Chinese Exclusionary Act, and not because of what they did, because they actually helped build the railroad and the transportation system, but it's because of who they are, and who they are is not wanted into this country. So coming from that, you understand that the immigration policy is steeped in racism. And so my question to everyone is, if you know racism is bad and you know this is steeped in racism or built on racism, why are we upholding this law? Are we saying that it is okay to be racist against somebody? And how do we justify that? So we justify that because we always we always look at the person as other, which is less than us. And that allows us to see violence imposed upon people that, and it would not affect us, it would not affect our conscience. So go back to slavery, go back to the Native Americans, where you would hear that if they don't accept the Bible, they would be less of a man, or 1/3 blood would be Black, and therefore less of a human. So when someone is strung up or killed, the rest of the community does not have any misgivings about what has happened, because they're just property or less than. So coming from that, you see it is easy for us to, for the government, and especially Cynthia's reference to the certain people, that they are able to use that. And it's built upon fear. So you just create this horrific situation where we are going to be, oh my God, the immigrants are coming, we are an invasion. So they're very deliberate about the language. And I want to stop here, but I'm going to reference a book called Hitler's American Model by James Whitman. It's a Princeton Press release, which he talks about Hitler on see what has happened in America and observing what is this racism and what it means to actually put that into place. And when I say put that into place, first he made them the other, right? We are Aryans, we are superior. Make them the other. Then he tried to deport them, remove them, and then when he couldn't deport them, he put them in detention. And lastly, when there wasn't enough detention, I wouldn't say what happened next. So, Christina, back to you.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you for lifting up this reference for what Hitler learned from what this country was doing to drive the strategies and the attacks against Jewish people. And that, gets us to the next part of the question and connection that I wanted to make. Part of the series also lifted conversations with Holocaust survivors yesterday, for those of you who may have missed it. And as part of the conversation of Ken Burns' new documentary on the Holocaust and the U.S., particularly looking at how the U.S. Implemented and crafted policy to intentionally close our doors to Jewish people that were fleeing Nazi Germany. And it's really important. I think the conversation that the film is lifting up, because accountability to government and institutions and knowing the truth about our history, it's so critical for us to chart a path forward that is more just. And for this part of the conversation, I wanted to bring Hasnia and Naisha into it, because you both have done work to hold government and institutions accountable. So I wanted to get started reflecting on that, on the importance of holding institutions and government accountable, and the work that you have led to hold accountability and institutions to account. So Naisha, let's start with you. Can you share with us how immigration policy has impacted your life personally and those in your community? And what are the ways in which you, with your community, have held our government accountable?
Okay, thank you so much. And yeah, like you mentioned, I have been involved in this kind of work for a little while now. And a little background about myself, I am a TPS holder. So TPS is it's a temporary protected status for Haitians. Well, it's for a lot of different countries, but it's designated to Haiti, which is my country of origin. And back in 2017, 18, when Trump had come into power, one of his first order of business was to terminate TPS and just leave a lot of people with no status. So essentially you would fall out of status when that takes into effect, and that puts a roadblock for all of these lives. Thousands of lives will be affected by this. So I took upon myself to enter in different organizations, and I was even part of a lawsuit against the government. I was a plaintiff, arguing that the termination of TPS for Haitians, along with other Latinx countries and other African countries that were involved in there, it was racist. Essentially, that's what it was. It was racist. There was no real, it was biased, and we had to show that. And thankfully, and I'm very happy that myself, along with other people, decided to take on that task, because it did yield some positive results. Not quite what I'm looking for, but it did give us some positive results, because we were able to get an injunction and the status was put on hold, and TPS was renewed in a couple of years later. It's not a permanent status like I mentioned, so I would always wish to have something more permanent, like to give those people who have been here for years some kind of permanent status to put them at ease throughout this process. But it's an ongoing battle, and that's a battle I'll happily take if it means that I am fighting for something that is right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for reminding us that it's important to also remember the small steps and the small wins that we're making along the way, to keep not only our hope up, but to continue to build power and fighting for more. Which I think it's so important to lift up from your story and the work that you have done in using litigation and filing a lawsuit against the U.S. government, and be able to make some wins to protect people, even if so temporarily. So I know the work continues on that front, Naisha, but I'm so grateful for your courage to engage in that legal fight and that legal battle with the U.S. government. And so much of the conversation often focuses on holding government accountable, elected officials accountable, but we often don't think about other institutions that are part of our society that are playing a role in either upholding or rejecting and pushing back against injustice and systematic racism and discrimination. And for your work, Hasnia, I know that you have brought your own university, New York University, to account. So what don't you share with us the work that you led to hold the university accountable, and why is it important for us to hold every institution to account?
Yeah. Specifically with my work at New York University, when I began, I was fortunate enough to be offered a large scholarship to attend. But thinking about a lot of other fellow undocumented or DACA students who, are applying to colleges after high school, I mean, oftentimes their parents are also undocumented and have to work low-wage jobs, often being paid under minimum wage, without access to, real wages that can afford them, something like college, which is really expensive. And so, I went into college thinking I'm so grateful for this, but I also know that I now need to do the work to make sure that I can leave the door open behind me. And what I did with the NYU Dream Team, which was an organization dedicated to undocumented students on campus, we lobbied the NYU administration to consider, this financial duress for undocumented students who were in a very small scholarship pool because they were considered international students, which we know, isn't correct. They live in the United States. They are at an actual level residents of the United States. And, we were able to get them to agree to offer them, larger financial aid packages and consider them in the pool of domestic students. And what was so impactful about this is I know now that, when undocumented or DACA students are being admitted to these really great universities and colleges, and specifically NYU, I know, okay, they might have a little bit more of a fairer shot of getting in because, as you know, also, undocumented students are not eligible for any federal aid. So it's a huge disadvantage. And I think all universities should be really taking that into consideration when they're, doing these scholarship packages. That also brought awareness about the issue of DACA to NYU, who then actually helped me do some lobbying at Congress. So I went to DC and I met with some Congress members where I was able to share my experiences about being a DACA student. And I know that NYU had also put out a letter of support for DACA. So, it's really important to have these larger institutions showing their support and helping lobby governments, because I think that they definitely, their voice is held and is very important when being, considered by government. So that was a really, really great experience. And I was grateful that NYU was willing to really listen to me and act.
Thank you for sharing that, Hasnia. I want to lift up there the role that young people and students play in social justice movements, and just the importance of supporting that leadership. And we have a little bit more time. I would love to come back to that theme of the conversation, since I know many of you here started your activism and your involvement in social justice work and in fighting for your communities as students, as young activists. But I think it's important to shift a little bit the focus now that we've talked about holding government and institutions accountable, to understand what is our government currently doing. Much of the coverage about the news has been about people fleeing and the policies in place that the Biden administration has maintained and or changed from the Trump administration. And, some may wonder, just in confusion perhaps, why are some things still the same and or what is the same and what's different? So I would love to get started with you, Robbie, and then I'll move on to Cynthia on this question. From your perspective and the work that you've been leading, share with us, after the Trump administration, where we saw attacks on immigrant communities and refugee communities every day, what has changed now under the Biden administration, and what's the same?
So this immigration policy and the way it's implemented through its agencies, Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol, it's such a monster, a behemoth, right? That nothing can change when you have this type of agencies with that particular goal, which is, again, I always have to bring up racism because that's the basis of it. So that nothing will change from that. It doesn't matter who is president. We have to actually repeal the law for anyone to be living in dignity. What I will say is we have to be careful though that we shouldn't only think about people fleeing a country, because there are people who actually who naturally move and migrate, so that you cannot draw lines. And that's part of the problem we face. We draw lines about who is deserving and who is not, etc. Especially people who have criminal convictions tend to be scapegoated to say, okay, we get rid of them and that will be fine. But coming back to your question about what has changed under this administration, I actually do disagree with a lot of the analysis out there, because if you look at the number of people, we're looking at 2 million people who have been released, who have been coming into the US, who are coming across the border and were allowed in, and they have been paroled in, which is allowing them to file paperwork for work authorization. So taking that into consideration, I look at that as a significant change. Doesn't mean that the system is not bad and horrible. In fact, I have been fighting my deportation since 2006. I've been in detention for 2 years. The system is meant to break your spirit. So and can you think about that when you break in someone's spirit? Can you imagine the child who sees their parents are living in terror, and the parents are not telling them this, but they are feeling this, and they cry every time they go to school? That's the level of terror that people face under this system. So when you ask me about what is different, nothing is different. Even though we may have some changes, nothing will be different, because the immigration system and customs enforcement is a wrong policy and a wrong agency, and we have to eliminate it, repeal the policy and remove the agency. Christina?
Thank you, Robbie. And I appreciate you putting a big point around what the system needs to look like. What are the things that we need to undo and eradicate? Certainly before we wrap up tonight's conversation, I definitely want to get back to this topic of what is the new and what can we all do to build that new together. So Cynthia, I wanted to engage you. I know that you lead work in different states, not only in your home state of Oklahoma, but across the country, fighting detention and deportation and fighting at the intersections as well on that. What can you share about your take and what you're seeing across the country of what has changed and what has remained the same under the Biden administration? And what's your analysis?
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Ravi. I think for the reminder about what this system does on a personal level. I think what is really important to highlight is that the infrastructure and the systemic violence that agencies like ICE and CBP carry out has been a system that has been built way before Trump, and that the current administration is continuously extending. I think when you ask me directly what has changed, not enough. After we had a presidential candidate make immigrants a primary target, and 4 years of threats of raids, of family separation, of increasing the funding for agencies to carry out mass deportation, not enough has changed. Not enough to fundamentally change the way in which the United States still criminalizes migration. Not enough has changed in our social consciousness about how we see immigrants and the role that they play. We praised them throughout the pandemic as essential workers. And as soon as we felt somewhat above the water, then we forgot that they also needed permanent protections, not just in the work that they do, but in their lives. To Ravi's point around the way in which the system and the way in which uncertainty really carries out, not enough has changed. And the Biden administration already needed to double down on a commitment to protect and defend immigrants, because they come with an experience already during an Obama era that deported over 2 million people. And so, what I think it's important to name is that the infrastructure of this deportation and detention machine has been policy choices and societal choices to dehumanize people that needs radical, bold action in order for us to shift from criminalizing and penalizing people for their humane nature to move, as Annie shared in their song, starting off the space. Humans migrate for a multitude of reasons, and especially in this moment where climate change, when social uprisings continue to happen all across the globe, it is the responsibility of the United States, a country that self-acclaimed to be a welcoming and a power force to keep democracy rolling, to actually meet the moment and welcome people instead of continue to invest in detaining and deporting millions of people at their most vulnerable moments. I think one thing that I will say during this Biden administration, what has changed is now the attacks on immigrants are happening more quietly, but our communities are still feeling it. We're seeing an extension of technology and surveillance. We're seeing a militarization of the border region to scapegoat the reality that we need to take bold action to welcome immigrants. And what we're also seeing is that when this administration wants to get it right, they do. We saw that in the response towards immigrants from Ukraine, where mass expedited welcoming support was rolled out. And then we saw the different reality with the Afghan community, who's still sitting on over 90% denial approval for their visas and welcoming support. So I think the administration has gotten it right. We want them to get it right for all immigrants, regardless of their color of their skin, and regardless of their income, and regardless of what labor they provide to this country.
So much there, Cynthia. Thank you both for reminding us of the attacks and how not much has changed. And as Ravi was saying, not a lot is different if we don't really get at the roots. And just hearing you, I'm also just reminded about the fact that all of you and your work are such a big testament to not only resistance and resilience, but to this point about killing of the spirit, the Ravi race. could not think of a better quote right now than Beyonce's song, "You will not break my soul." And that's what you embody every day as you keep doing this work, whether it's like fighting your own case, of deportation, but also fighting for an entire community. The systems and the policies have been intentionally designed to break our souls, but communities and you all here showing time after time that will not happen, and the work continues. Before we keep going and in the conversation, I want to remind all of you, our dear audience, that you're also welcome to submit your questions. So please put your questions in the chat in whichever platform that you're watching us from, and we will be including those questions in our Q&A section of the program. I wanted to talk a little bit about what if any difference have you seen in the consciousness of the country, of the people, in our communities, especially after the Trump administration, especially after the massive protests, the largest in history, led by the Movement for Black Lives, and the layering of the pandemic that many of you have mentioned. We saw a beautiful uprising, and a lot of folks, including many of you here, have already made the connection between immigration, systematic racism, and I would love for you to help us understand. And moving to Hajnia and Naisha on this question, but if Ravi and Cynthia, you want to weigh in, also just let me know. How should we understand the connections between immigrant rights or immigrant injustice and anti-Blackness? So Hajnia and Naisha, we could start with you, whichever one of you that feels comfortable to get started.
Naisha, maybe you want to go ahead.
Yes. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, as in since the pandemic?
How would you help us understand, sometimes we think of immigration or immigrants as a separate issue from systematic racism, and that's separate from anti-Blackness. So can you help us understand the connection between those?
Okay, well, from my personal experience, I think Cynthia mentioned a point similar to that, is that they do somehow separate immigration and, how do I say this? Okay, so you see how the reaction that people have to Black immigrants is not the same from their reaction with European immigrants. We are certainly treated differently. We don't have the same policies. We don't have the same rules, like different laws that they bring into to kind of keep Black immigrants down or controlled. The same is not applied for a lot of other European immigrants. So I feel like that in itself is something that, when I was dealing with the lawsuit with the government back in 2018, that's definitely something I was keeping in the back of my mind, of how this decision was biased, is because of that distinction between Black immigrants and non-Black immigrants.
Thank you, Naisha. If other speaker wants to weigh in here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, anti-immigrant rhetoric and anti-Blackness go hand in hand, anti-Blackness and racism. I mean, when you're just looking at on an institutional level, like the laws and regulations we have, like, for example, the visa waiver program, which entitles certain countries to be able to visit the United States without applying for a visa. I mean, look at those countries. Are there any African countries on there? Are there any, countries with predominantly Black, population on that list? I mean, oftentimes no. And, you know, when you're thinking about the way that this country views immigration, I mean, I feel like it's always, you know, when we think about immigrants, or when they're trying to paint this vision of these bad immigrants, I feel like, who are they always pointing fingers at, right? They're pointing at fingers at countries of, you know, people of color. And I think that they know subconsciously this country has so much racism rooted in it. And so they know that they can use that, right? Like use the imagery of people of color trying to enter through the border to make people afraid. And it's really horrible to see and feel, and I wish that we did talk a little bit more about anti-Blackness and racism when we're, I'm sorry, I meant to say that I think that I wish we could see, you know, the ideology of Black Lives Matter and also anti-immigrant rhetoric as really two very, very tied concepts. And I think it's really important to really bring those two thoughts and those two organizations together, because really it is a collective work.
Thank you, Hashni. I know, Ravi, you want to weigh in on this as well. Go ahead, Ravi.
Yes. We have to always go back to history, right? And I would like to talk about the Holocaust itself in a minute. But the British, if you look at the poison that the British inserted in all our countries, about just to keep control of millions of people. The problem is we have bought into that poisons ourselves, so that we think that the white man is better than us, smarter, everything, because we have our minds have been colonized. So first we have to remove this premise that someone is better than me for us to actually win anything, because if we need approval from someone else, then we will not be able to become or to grow into our full potential. But I want to highlight a particular country, Haiti, right? That's where Naisha is from. And Haiti has always been a target of the United States. And if you understand that Haiti was the first country that broke away from slavery, they led this. And France and United States targeted them from that moment on. In fact, anything that they have done, and there was an article in the New York Times that talked about the money that Haiti had to pay France because they didn't want to be in. They claimed they fought for independence and got it. And the United States, even think of what is the word I'm looking for? A spouse who has been scorned, right? Or crazy spouses. United States is acting like that, where no matter what happens, they will always target Haitians and Haitians. So when bringing it back to the topic of Blackness and immigrant, as we have been colonized by that, we have been indoctrinated, and they have been using that those two dichotomy to make their work easier. So African Americans will fight will say this is not my issue and we're not going to support immigrants. Immigrants will say this is not anti-Blackness is not an issue because such and such and such, right? I've heard that many times. So we are fighting for nothing because we have nothing. We have nothing that was given to us, or even if we have something, they take it away. We're talking about Seneca Village. We're talking about Tulsa, Oklahoma. So for us to actually overcome this, we have to work together and put aside all of those crazy colonial thoughts about class.
Thank Thank you, Ravi. Yeah, we won't be able to get forward if not together. Cynthia, we do have time for you to weigh in on this, if you want to add.
Yeah, I think it's important. And Ravi, I think you touched a lot of points that I wanted to highlight, but I think it's important to talk about even the impact of the uprisings over the last couple of years that also has had in the immigrant rights movement to really reconcile and grapple with how immigration and the immigration system has also really put us in a position of creating model minorities, creating model immigrant that separate us from what the system really creates as the group of people they need to control. And so when you think about the tension, who's deportable, and you think about all of the ways in which folks are criminalized, the folks who, from really early on, we hear even presidents like Obama saying we're only deporting criminals to really dehumanize folks. And then when you see statistically that Black immigrants compose the majority of per the amount, I think, of folks who are in removal proceedings, Black immigrants are targeted and they're criminalized at a higher rate. And I think it's important to name that when you're seeing all of the changes and policies about who becomes deportable, who is inadmissible, who are we letting in and who are we not letting in, who can fight their case and who is expedited, removed or expelled, as they're doing with thousands of Haitian folks at the southern region. All of those as intentional for us to make a deep assessment of the role that race plays in this, and the role that within our own movements we have to undo racism and anti-Blackness so that we can actually strive for collective liberation. Immigrant rights will not move forward if we don't move forward an agenda that is pro-Black. We don't need to just be anti-racist. We need to actively be a pro-Black movement that makes center and front the experience of Black immigrants who are also being criminalized by multiple systems when they are coming into this country, when they are living already in this country, and when they're targeted for removal.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I think that so much of, many of you are referring to historical facts in a moment where a lot of information and books about our history are being banned. So just reminding us that the importance of lifting up history and how it connects itself. And as we have been talking in the series, also about the impact of the policies on Jewish communities and how the country treated Jews. I wanted to bring in Ravi as well to help us make some connections there. Also with, anti-Semitism and what is important for us to keep in mind about those intersections. Ravi?
Thank you, Christina. I will not be able to watch this documentary. And the reason being, I have been so traumatized by immigration and customs enforcement, all the things that I have lived through, like Cynthia and many, many others. The imagine seeing my daughter who was in the courtroom, an immigration courtroom with me, and she seen me in a red jumper with shackles on my hand and my feet. And I tried to hold her for a minute before they took me away. And she was terrified. Can you imagine how I felt? Now, I bring that up because, and that trauma actually is a reason why I cannot watch certain movies. But I was reading an opinion here in the Washington Post by Kate Woodsum, right? And she said, there were moments when I was watching the film and I would close my eyes and the historical analysis felt like it was contemporary news. Contemporary news report, which was chilling. Was that the intent? So I was flabbergasted because that's a form of denial where we don't want to see history repeating itself, and actually, there's a break in the space-time continuum, and the multiverse is collapsing on itself. I'm sorry, I am a Spider-Man. I'm a fan. So when you literally see everything that happened in the Holocaust is step by step. I was just reading the overview in Whitman's book, and they talk about the judges who are in Germany who are actively propagating what was happening and supporting and building on that. So we see that happening now, right? But many times we could not speak about our experiences and equate it with what happened in the Holocaust. Because for one thing, how can we equate it with, oh my God, 3 million people died and I have just been deported, right? So this is even though we have lived the same trauma that they have lived, and we are not killed yet, but we still have that. So, and a part of that is the identity that comes with the trauma that we all face. The Jewish community, we don't like to compare because we don't want to say this. We have faced as much as they have, but it's also part of their identity. We have lived this. So I want to challenge all our Jewish community. Don't think of this as an identity. Think of the blessings and what you bring to this as you are a survivor, right? And you have survived this, and you need to identify, because you have lived through this, identify exactly what has happened and speak out against. You have the books that you read for Passover. It slipped my mind. Which is the freedom language. Talking about Egypt. You have your unique experience of what happened to you, identifying it now, speaking out, and actually coming to us, the immigrants and the blacks, everyone, to say, listen, I have lived through this. I want to help you. I want to be part of you because I don't want a repeat of this, because it's also going to affect me. Christina, I'm sorry I'm so loud.
No, thank you, Ravi, for the passion you're bringing into the conversation. These are moments in history of individual and collective trauma, and part of what this conversation is about is us being able to heal through those conversations and recognizing that every experience is unique in each community, and the trauma throughout history is unique, and we are feeling some of the sounds and rhythms of that trauma regurgitate throughout policies that we're seeing today. And what's really scary about the moment that we're in is to see that rise in fascist-like policies and regimes to target particular communities and to silence democratic institutions and to silence a democratic process. So we've talked in this conversation about many heavy topics. And also very courageous topics in terms of your own leadership. And I want to be able to also move into some of what you're seeing in community that inspires you in the work that you are doing. What are some of the work, the stories, or simply what is a source of inspiration for you as we are in these difficult times? So I'll get started with Naisha and Hosnia. Hosnia, let's start with you, and then we're going to move to Naisha.
Yeah. So The work that I do specifically now has been a lot of just trying to help new immigrants that are specifically coming from Turkey, which I was born, with their legal paperwork, and helping them, figure out, some sort of pathway to residency here, some pathway to legal residency, I should say. And as I'm doing that work, there are so many community members who are willing to help pay for legal fees, who are willing to help translate for them, who are willing to also offer them jobs while they don't have employment authorization, so that they're able to feed themselves and their families if they came over with family, helping them find housing, and making sure that they're fed, that they're able to pay their bills. And it's just so reassuring to see, but it's also a reminder that, none of this is possible without the support of community. It's so important that we are all holding each other. We're preserving culture, and through culture, we're preserving our community, that we still, see each other as neighbors. And it motivates me even more, even though I think on a political level, I'm really disappointed and discouraged, when I'm with my community and I see the work that's being done and the rallying that's being done. I feel good. I feel like there's hope in the individual and there's hope in community. And it reminds me that we really don't need anything other than ourselves, and that we're survivors and we're fighters. And it makes me feel a lot warmer and more hopeful about the future.
Thank you, Hasnia. Neisha?
Yes, well, I would say a lot of things, honestly, inspires me to see. Having done this work for a little bit, I can go over a few things. Well, for one, I love the courage that I've seen in people who are not afraid to share their stories. If anybody knows anything about Haitians, we're very prideful. So it can be very hard sometimes to tell somebody what you're going through politically, or, you're an immigrant who fell out of status for whatever reason. So to see people stand up and tell their stories in hopes to, get some help or to get assistance from from the community has been amazing. It has helped me step out of my comfort zone and speak up about my issues. Other things that I've loved seeing is just the help and support from other people who are not even in the same boat as me. There could be American citizens or permanent residents who just, feel for the issue and they genuinely want to help. And these are people who are helping organizing, who are helping us set up visits with different politicians to talk about TPS and to talk about how we can have some kind of permanent solution for people in the community who are impacted by it. Things like that have really have kept me motivated to say that, okay, so we are not alone. There are people, even though this problem is not personal to them, but they understand the cause and they're willing to still assist us with this. So that helps bring the issue forward, honestly, because I do feel like it does take a village, and without the help and support of everyone, whether or not they are impacted by the issue, is important. So things like that have been really inspiring to see.
Thank you for sharing that, Neisha. Thank you for just also reminding us that people, even within our own communities, right, like have so much struggle to come out, to speak up. And every time that someone is supported by community to share their story, you get to build that courage bed by bed. And that kind of personal transformation turns into community transformation as well. So thank you for sharing that journey that was your own, and that now you're also seeing in many communities that you're working with. Before I move on this question about what's bringing you hope and what is the source of inspiration to Ravi and Cynthia, I want to remind the viewers that you could also include your questions here and engage in the conversation. So just type your question in the chat in whichever platform you're joining us by, and we will be covering those in our Q&A section of the conversation. So, that same question to you, Ravi and Cynthia, and let's get started with you, Cynthia. What is a source of inspiration or hope for you at the moment?
This is such a powerful question, because I think in the moments that we're living in, the thing that brings me inspiration is young people. I think about the young person that I was and the young person that I needed to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I think about the young people today, the way in which they're reclaiming their identities, the way in which they're reshaping what relationship building looks like in their communities, the way that they are challenging and pushing us to reimagine what safety means in our communities beyond these carceral systems, beyond this policing state. I think they bring me hope. And they bring me hope particularly because we're in a moment where there is deep misinformation that continues to be pushed through multiple avenues to discount the power that young people have and the role that they play in shaping the future that ultimately we will all benefit from. And I think that, just a few weeks ago at the beginning of August, we were able to get a young queer immigrant person from Venezuela, George from New York, released from detention after 3 years of incarceration. And that brings me hope, because what we were able to do is channel a lot of energy from young people who knew that we needed to release George, that the immigration system was leaving us very little room for us to fight for permanent protection. But we had people power. We had young people who didn't take no for an answer. And we have community. And as we continue to show up for one another, I think what brings me peace at the end of the day is knowing that we're building a network of care that will show up regardless whether the state shows up for not or not for us. We got us, and that it's fundamentally what will change the society that we're part of and the future that we want to have.
That was so profound, Cynthia. We're building networks of care in the midst of so much attack that we're experiencing. And that's I like to think that this conversation is part of building that network of care with you and also with the viewers. We're having conversations that are bringing transformation. So, Ravi, on this question, what is a source of inspiration for you?
I promise to keep it short. So many we can speak on this panel, every one of us, to speak about our experience and experience that we have lived through dealing with ICE. Right? Until you become a citizen, you are still living in this uncertainty because they can pick you up and deport you at any time. So who inspires me are the people who are facing this deportation crisis, whether it's themselves or their loved one. And the problem they have, even if they have a lawyer, no one explains what is happening, and they are living in a dark space. But when you actually work with them and you educate them and you hold their hand, and they are getting empowered now to be able to not just tell their story, but to talk about others. So, we have said that if you're speaking about yourself, you're a victim. If you're speaking about others, you become a leader. And to see women and men, people who have been traumatized, now standing up for others, because that's what they have to do, is very inspiring. In fact, we have a rally on Tuesday the 27th. The words are, "Hear me speak, I am woman." Only women will be speaking to that. So it is that, and that is the empowerment and inspiration that they bring. Christina?
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. And I love how each of you is saying your point in a way that builds us for the next phase of the conversation, because we're moving here into the next couple of minutes, final minutes that we are going to have together before we go into Q&A as a section of the conversation. And I wanted to get your, one thing for viewers that are watching and that are part of the conversation. What is one thing that they can do to be part of the change and to create change? So I want to get started with Hasnia and Aisha. Aisha, let's get started with you. Then we move to Hasnia and then to Ravi and Cynthia before we go into Q&A. What is one thing that you want to leave us with?
Definitely be more open and educated about certain topics. So I'll say this just because from my own personal experience, whenever I speak to certain people regarding my status as an immigrant, I am a TPS holder, their reaction a lot of times tells me whether I should keep going with this conversation or whether I should, okay, you know enough about me now. So I say that just because to be more open and empathetic to people's situations. So whenever you meet a person, not to automatically assume, okay, I'll give an example. Whenever we are during the voting season, people are always asking me, oh, did you vote? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And then they're like, why not? And they go on a rant on why it's important to vote. And I'm like, I really wish I could, but I can't. And then they start to, so before they even ask more information about how they can make that possible for you, how they can assist in making that possible, people tend to be judgy up front. So I would say that is definitely would make a huge difference on whether or not somebody is willing to accept your help or is willing to let you in on how you can assist them in moving forward or in making certain things possible for them. So that's definitely one thing I would say, is to be open and empathetic to people's situations.
Open heart, open mind. Thank you so
Yes.
much for reminding us of that, Aisha. Hasnia, what is one thing that people can do to be part of the change?
Find your local immigrant rights advocacy organization, sign up with them, volunteer, donate, and at a minimum, just subscribe to their email list. Keep yourself informed, especially with local policy and the events and the work that they're doing. I think that's just the most important thing, or the number one thing that you can do for someone who wants to be an ally and support.
Thank you. Ravi?
Let Cynthia go first, because I will, if there's only a half a second, I will just speak for half a second.
Go for it, Cynthia.
I think I have two things. You have power, and reminding of where and how you use your power. We need to be pro-immigrant, pro-Black, anti-racist, community care-based, local and national fight every day at all times, not just when we're under this visible threat. Because one of the pieces that is most relevant about what we're talking about, history repeating itself, is that it happens quietly, and we don't see the magnitude of it until it's actually coming up for us. And so find where are the places where you can use your privilege, find the places where you can use your power, and find the conversations that will challenge the obstacles as a society that keeps us from seeing each and every person in our community as part of that collective care and that collective liberation. If we have continuous conversation about privilege, power, and the role that we play in dismantling the systems, we will win.
Thank you, Cynthia. Ravi?
Yeah, I want us to see the humanity in each other, right? Aisha said something very critical: don't be judgy. So some of the rules I go by is no judgment. So that helps you connect to the humanity of the person. But there's another rule I also follow, is respect, because when we respect each other, we are on the same level, right? And that is very important, to be able to connect to each other and understand what someone is facing and understand the privilege you have in being who you are and being where you are. Christina.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being very clear about what each of us can do. Be open heart, open mind, take action, remember about our power, see each other's humanity, and get engaged locally in immigrant rights organizations or in your community. So now I want to jump into questions from viewers that have been part of the conversation with us so far, and want to hear more from you on very specific questions. I want to go back to a local question. And for those of you who are from New York City, let me know who would like to weigh in first here. But the question from the audience is, New York City is called or known as a sanctuary city. But what does that really mean for people on the ground? Do refugees and asylum seekers here face anti-immigrant policies that are unique to New York? How could you describe the conditions of the experience of refugees and immigrants here in a place like New York City?
I will go first, Cynthia. Christina, sorry.
Robbie, go.
Yeah, New York City is a sanctuary city. It was we fought for that, we got it. But we come back to the question of who do we want, who will save us? And I hate to use the word save. We cannot expect the elected officials to save us. So sanctuary city is a designation that was created by legislation, but that doesn't mean it takes us off the hook. And to be a real sanctuary city, we have to get involved. We have to participate. New York is at best on that. New York is pretty good on that because we have a lot of nonprofits. We have a lot of immigrant advocates. You see Hasnia and Naisha talking about that. And they are leaders, and that is what makes Sanctuary City bringing our walking the walk to help others that is facing this. And we welcome the refugees and asylees or anyone who comes into New York City. And I will say to Abbott and DeSantis, please send them up. In fact, if you give me the date and time you have the buses, I can fill them. Christina.
Thank you, Robbie, for reminding us that so much of the news and the conversation is focusing on what DeSantis and Governor Abbott are doing, both driven by political motives in talking to and engaging and rallying up their base of voters as we're going into election time, but also reminding us of the flip side of that, which is that communities in New York have been going in and day out, welcoming people. And I know, Robbie, you have been part of those efforts and many others here, whether that is providing legal resources and food or just a warm welcoming and telling people, yes, you're welcome here. And we're going to be, as Cynthia says, a network of care and taking care of each other. And that has been the flip side. That is also happening here in this country. And I think that that's very important to ground ourselves in as well. I'm going to move into another question from the audience that is also very timely on how, again, we see a rise of attacks on the freedoms of different constituencies and different communities with the latest decision of the Supreme Court of Roe versus Wade. And then we're seeing sort of the domino effect of local states passing policies denying women's the right to an abortion. So can you help us here, Hasnia, make the connection? What is the connection between Roe versus Wade and immigrant and refugee communities?
Yeah, I mean, Roe versus Wade signifies that we have a very dangerously right Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court deals with specifically is the idea of constitutionality, whether something is constitutional, right? In the case of Roe versus Wade, their decision was it's not constitutional for the federal government to allow abortion access because it's not mentioned in the Constitution. And when you think about the Constitution, I mean, who was the Constitution written for, right? And by whom was it written? By white property owning men. Of course, there's no space in the Constitution speaking on women's rights. And similarly, there's no space or place in the Constitution where they talk about the rights and freedoms of immigrants, right? They do a good job, creating a distinction between a citizen and an immigrant. But knowing that the Supreme Court now takes a very strict interpretation of the Constitution that we know is, embedded in white supremacy and sexism, we know that looking ahead, as we fear that DACA might now probably be reviewed by the Supreme Court, we know that we're not going to get judgments in our favor, and they're going to be able to justify this by using a document that was written almost 300 years ago for the benefit of white American men, and it's definitely very deeply disturbing. And again, it just signifies that we're definitely moving to the right, and we're moving into even more anti-immigrant sentiment, especially in our legal system.
Thank you so much, Hasina. I want to move to
add one sentence.
Now. Oh, go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, it's about control, right? They want to control women. They're controlling the labor force. They're controlling immigrants. It's all about control, and we are allowing them to do that. I will stop.
It's all about control. Thank you for reminding us, Ravi, of that. Cynthia, I know you wanted to weigh in on this question. Is there anything else that you would add? And then I have a question coming up for you, Naisha.
Yes, I think I would just add the impact that this decision will have on immigrant people, particularly folks in areas where immigration enforcement is so prominent and present, folks who have to seek abortion access outside of their communities, where checkpoints mean risk of detention, deportation. And added to that, I am from Oklahoma, where one of the strictest bans on abortion access, it basically triggered after the Supreme Court decision. And I think it just continues to be about criminalizing people who are seeking reproductive care, criminalizing particularly folks beyond just women, right? Gender expansive, trans men, non-binary folks. Just continue to add on how this is connected to more than just women's rights, but just thinking about immigrant rights, LGBTQ plus folks who are impacted by this. And that it's primary to how we see the impact, for example, in Irwin Detention Center, where people were being forced, sterilized inside detention under government care. And so when you think about the impact and the repercussions of this type of outcomes, people who already are behind detention or incarceration are being impacted even more than folks who may not have even access to leave their communities. Folks in the border region threat criminalization because of the state that they live in, and they're also risking deportation if they seek reproductive justice care access.
Is the layers of the different ways in which it impacts communities that have multiple identities, immigrant women, undocumented, LGBT. So thank you for reminding us of the intersection, Cynthia. I want to shift here a little bit for a specific question for Naisha. We know, Naisha, that you are passionate about becoming a clinical psychologist one day, and we send you the best of energies in that journey for you to get there. And so in that spirit of that topic, we wanted to hear from you about the mental and emotional concerns or issues that people threatened with deportation face, and how can they find support and how can they access help?
Yeah, definitely. That is something that stood out definitely throughout this whole process as well is people threatened with deportation, like myself with, my status being at risk here. It is an extremely stressful thing to deal with, and psychologically it does take a toll on you, especially day in and day out. You don't know what's next. You don't know, you're living in an uncertainty every day. You don't know whether you should try to purchase a house, try to move out. You don't know how to plan your life or move ahead without having, at least knowing that I am here to stay and the status is not going to be taken away from you tomorrow when I wake up. Things like that can take an emotional toll on you. And what I would suggest is to find a person or a group or anything like that that you can confide in. Not dealing with it alone would make a difference, because think it can lead you to a state of depression. I have met people who have felt in a deep depression as a result of this, and them being involved and finding another person that's in the same shoes as them, who are working on the issue and staying informed on what's happening, helps. Not letting it take a huge toll on you to the point where it's dominating your mind day in and day out. I highly suggest for people to take a breather. If you have a favorite activity that you like to do, things like that, to keep your mind occupied when things are uncertain, when we don't know what's next. We don't always have the answers. A lot of the times the government handles these things and we know whenever it comes out. So until we know more, to stay active and stay educated, be in an organization that deals with that particular issue, so you feel like you're doing something to change your outcome. It kind of gives you some kind of relief emotionally.
Thank you so much, Naisha, for all of the resources that you shared. And we've reached our time together in terms of questions that we could get from the audience, but I know the conversation will continue. So I want to thank you, all of the speakers, for joining us, and I'm going to kick it off to Brian. We cannot hear you, Brian.
You would think that after 2 years of doing this, that wouldn't be an issue. Christina and panel, thank you so much. That was just dynamite. I want to cheat things a little bit because I see that there was a question that came in here that I was so curious to know the answer to. That someone wrote, I really enjoyed Ani Cordero's performance. Is there music or literature around immigrant rights that the panelists turn to for inspiration? Sorry to jump into that seat. Christina, just wanted to ask if you all had a quick response to that question. I'm so curious.
I can share. Every time I'm having a heavy day, I listen to Manny Wells, Black artist, immigrant. There's a song particularly, it's called Peace, that it just changes my mood every time. And so if you get the chance, support his music, and just know that if you're listening to it, one of the days of the week, I'm listening to it myself.
Love that. Duly noted. Anyone else have any brief responses to that question?
I don't have a specific music or literature, just a quote that I usually keep in mind whenever things start to get a little crazy is I just remind myself that nothing worth having comes easy. So it kind of keeps me in the battle. It's like, okay, just keep going. Just keep going. That's usually what I think about.
I'm going to use that as you had the final comment there, Naisha. Everybody, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight and your grace, and for joining us tonight. Really honored to have you here. Christina, always a pleasure. To all of you watching, thank you so much. Thank you also to our promotional partners, Facing History and Ourselves and Self-Help Community Services, for their support here and the great work they do year-round. Thank you, Ani Cordero, for that beautiful performance at the top. On behalf of everyone here at the WNET Group, thank you for watching tonight. And please continue to connect with us on Channel 13 and at pbs.org, Exploring Hate, and all our other stations and platforms. Please continue to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. We look forward to seeing you again soon.